Hi, welcome back to my channel. It's been a while since I've uploaded anything. I was steadily uploading for the month of May, and then I abruptly stopped, and I wanted to make a video to explain what happened and what's been going on, but just share my story, and hopefully it helps with this process. Okay, so okay. As you know, if you watch my videos, you know I have a dog named Mister. And a little bit of background about Mister, if you aren't aware of his story, he he was a stray dog in Ecuador who was found on the side of the road, and he had been hit by a car. This was in 2016 that he was found, I believe. And luckily he was taken in by a foster family, and they let his leg heal and connected with a shelter in New York, Stray from the Heart. And at that time, the time that we adopted him, I was desperately looking for a dog. I had a dog growing up, and I really wanted a dog as a companion. I wanted to rescue a dog, and I found him on petfinder.com, which had been like my homepage for months because I was just searching and applying for dogs, and found him, and it was a match, and we were approved, and he was flown from Ecuador to Houston, and then Houston to New York, and to come live with us. So we knew he had a few different things going on with him. He had in his back left leg, he has it, the best way I can describe it is fused bone from where he was hit by the car. It wasn't set or operated on or fixed in any way, it just healed. So it's kind of just like a peg leg. It doesn't have any, it doesn't flex at the toes where normally a dog's foot would. And he also had some other social things that we had to work on. In 2018, I, with my partner and Mister, of course, I'm laughing because he's doing something weird right now. In 2018, I moved with my partner to Germany for his job, and of course Mister came too, and everything's been fine. If you didn't know, Europe is actually a really pet-friendly place. Dogs are allowed in restaurants and stores, most places actually. So Mister has gotten to explore a lot in Europe, and we're really grateful for that. So that's a bit of the background. So we've been living in Germany for 2 years now. Hopefully getting back to the US at some point. That's where we want to be. And now more than ever, I'm missing the US. I know there's a tremendous amount of turmoil going on right now, and it makes me want to be there to be supportive, which is another reason kind of why I held off on making this video for so long, or so many months, is because it's been kind of chaos, and I didn't want to just try and act like my problems were so big and so important when the world is suffering, and there are so many important movements happening that it felt a little bit weird to try and, you know, talk about what's going on with my family. Well, I guess I decided now is a good enough time. I didn't want to take away from the support that I have for all of the people back home doing the right thing, doing the best thing for the country, by crying in a video about something totally different, because my heart was also aching for my country right now. So, and I knew I was gonna be crying in this video because it's because I'm a super sensitive person. It's really hard to talk about. Okay, so now that I've just keep circling it, in May, I'll just jump in then. So in May, goes around May 15th. It was a bit of a blur. Mister started acting a little strange. So the first thing we noticed was that he wasn't, it was on a Tuesday, I think, he wasn't jumping up on our couch anymore. He was just sitting in front of it and looking at us like, can you help me up? So I kind of went and looked to see if maybe his back leg was acting up or something. I take him for 2 walks a day, so maybe he just got over exerted that previous week or something. So we didn't know, but I looked at his back leg and I was moving it around, trying to see if he had any pain or if he reacted anyway, and he didn't. And so I thought maybe he was just tired, because sometimes he would kind of baby the leg if he, went too crazy at the dog park or something like that. So, but we had visited a vet before, and they just said, that's kind of going to be the nature of the beast if, he's just going to have this situation. That there's nothing that we could really do about it. We had gotten him x-rays soon after adopting him just to make sure there was nothing actually wrong, because we saw that he was kind of holding up the leg and we just want to make sure it was okay. So we did get x-rays. We got him another full examination after we adopted him, and that's the vet kind of said, like, no, it's okay. It's just a improperly healed bone that's gonna be, it's gonna do this from time to time. So, that was my first instinct. And then the next day, it wasn't better. He wasn't getting up on the couch, and he also wasn't really standing up out of his own bed. So I kind of had to prop him up, and I just picked him up and put him on his feet, and he would go. We went for a walk on Wednesday, but I started to grow more and more concerned because, it seemed to be getting worse. So I started talking to my partner, and I was telling him that I felt like there's something wrong, and I do tend to be a bit of a drama queen, so we both were kind of trying to play it cautious because we didn't want to just go to the vet, especially during a pandemic, if we didn't need to. So we just continued to watch him, and I texted my mom about it to try to see what she thought, and then I think she was the first one to bring up that maybe it was he hurt his back, because my family's dog, he had, kind of not really a chronic, but I guess it was really a chronic because it was a kind of a reoccurring, is probably the best way to describe it, back injury. Every time he would get played with too rough with other dogs, he would tweak his back and wouldn't move much. So she thought maybe it was something like that, maybe a pulled muscle or something. So I thought, okay, we do need to go to the doctor. And I did notice that, like, he was letting me touch his feet a lot more than he normally would. He's very protective of his paws. He pulls them away if you touch them. So I was noticing that. I was afraid that there was something wrong with, like, his nerves or something was going on. So we found a hospital. I think I can't remember, Wednesday or Thursday we went to the hospital. And just to remind you, we do live in Germany, and I'm not fluent, especially in specific areas of the language that require, like, specialized vocabulary. I definitely don't. I'm not able to describe anatomy of a dog in German, and because of the pandemic, the regulations, only one of us can go into this animal hospital. So that made it a lot more difficult because most people do speak English in Frankfurt. Many people do. But there's always going to be something lost a little bit. So I went in with him and was describing to the vet what was going on. And she did some tests. It wasn't like an invasive test. They were like exercises and different, like, touch points. I don't know how to describe them other than that, to determine what was going on with him. And she thought perhaps everything pointed to like a slip disc, or a compressed disc, something in his back. At this point, he was still able, when I propped him up, like if he was sitting down, I picked his legs up, he was still able to walk. There was a little bit more of a drunken gait to the way that he was moving, so it did seem like it was getting worse. And she did witness that, and that kind of went into her analysis. She said that there are 2 courses of action for that. And the first would be to get an MRI and then pursue surgery. And the other would be a conservative approach, which would be to put him on anti-inflammatories and some other pain medication and put him on crate rest and see if the injury can heal itself. And I was still really confused because there wasn't a time when I thought he could have been injured. He never cried out. He never, like, it was just kind of out of the blue, and there was no onset that I remembered. And because we were both at home due to the stay-at-home order for the pandemic, we both were around him for months. We never left his side, or he never left ours. So there was nothing that stuck out to either one of us. So we were a little confused about that, which is why I kind of wanted to do the conservative approach, because I thought, surgery sounds really scary. I'd rather just try and see if this will work. And she's not saying that there's any risks at this point, so long as we, keep him still. And so I thought it was the best way to go, with what we were told. So we took him home that night with a load of medication. He walked out of the hospital, lifted his leg to pee. It was really bizarre because we got him home and he kind of went into complete panic mode of like an hour after we got home. Okay, so my video cut off there, but as I was saying, he was kind of in panic mode. He was super stiff and crying, and nothing would calm him down, not me holding him, and his muscles seemed to be like completely seizing up, which was really scary. And so I was, of course, freaking out and wanted to go directly back to the hospital. But we decided to wait, and I sat up the entire night and watched him do this for hours until about 5:30 in the morning. And I woke my partner up and I was like, we have to go back. There's something really wrong. It's not okay. So we went right back, and I went in again, which I forgot to mention that the reason why it is my partner is German. So had us both been able to go inside, where there would have been a person there who could translate, and it might have been easier to communicate. I went inside, and it was a different veterinarian. She was like, okay, well, it seems like it might be getting worse, so we're going to just obviously not do the conservative approach. At this point, they still thought it was the IVDD, the slip disc, or the degenerative disc, an injury of some sort. So she's like, we're going to take him to do an MRI. You guys can go home and wait, and we will call you when we have the results of the MRI to tell you if we need to do surgery right away or what the next move is, and just to get your okay, because, you know, they thought that they were going to see in the MRI that they needed to do surgery, and they were going to call us to make sure that we wanted to do it, and then go forward with that. And it's a really long couple of hours, and we were waiting and waiting, and then we finally got a phone call, and it turns out that it wasn't a slip disc at all, and that it seemed to be some kind of infection in the blood of his spine. Again, not really able to tell us exactly, and neither one of us really knew what that meant. They suggested that we leave him at the hospital over the weekend to be given what they called infusions. So of whatever pain anti-inflammatory medication that they gave him, and that they would call us each day to give us an update. So this is where it kind of becomes a little bit of a blur, because as I was saying before, we had like he was a healthy, active, happy dog, and then it all changed so suddenly. So we weren't prepared for that situation. So the Friday he was at the hospital, I think that was the first day he was there. He was also, okay, so I'm trying to think of exactly how it went. So they gave us the phone call that told us that it wasn't what they thought it was. And the next day, we weren't really sleeping throughout that night, and we were up very early, waiting to hear from them, because we were kind of optimistic at that point, because we both didn't really want to put him through a surgery. We were hoping we didn't have to do that, especially because my anxiety is so bad that I was just thinking like, oh, I don't know if I'll be able to sit through hours of not knowing, and he's under anesthesia. It just scared me. So I was hoping that there was a different course of action. Then on Saturday, so we were still optimistic at that point, and but we were really worried, scared, and kind of just like, it was just like a blur, basically. So I can't remember exactly if it was us calling them or if they called us because the days I kind of have them mixed up a little bit, but I was just like, why haven't they called yet? It was probably like 2 p.m. at that point, and I just really wanted to hear what was going on. And I missed him, and because of the COVID epidemic, no one was allowed to go visit their pets. So I knew he would have a hard time, because he was rarely ever away from us, especially those few months we were together. So I knew that he was going to have some separation anxiety. So finally we got a phone call, or we called. I think it was that they called us. And so I spoke with them, and the things that the veterinarian was saying, I couldn't comprehend it, because it was just so drastically different than what we were anticipating. So she told us that he can't move his back 2 legs anymore. He no longer can control his bladder or his bowels. And he's really stressed, and he wasn't eating. So I was like, okay, so what do we do now? What kind of medicine, what kind of therapy, what can we do? Because I was just in shock. She was saying that it just kind of, the words that stick out to me were, I think this is the day, it's really hard to remember. She said that maybe it's time to say goodbye, is what she said. And I'm over the phone talking to this lady. And at that point, I got really angry, and kind of went into the, how dare you, what are you talking about? How could you even say that? Like, what do you mean? And I handed the phone to my fiance, and he was kind of trying to reason, like, well, what's going on? What is she talking about? And we were like, no, we want to talk to someone else. Like, this is crazy. What are you saying? And she was basically saying that, they kept repeating the phrase, he will never recover, he will never be the same. And we kind of didn't really understand what she meant by that, because to me, like, it was a shock to know that some kind of infection in his blood that they couldn't clearly diagnose had paralyzed him in a matter of days, and that the paralysis was enough to make certain decisions. So we were kind of like, no, like, we want to see what's going on. We want to wait, to the weekend, through the weekend. We want to continue with these treatments and see, what the response is. So they said, okay, we can do that. We'll continue giving him the infusions. So obviously the next 24 or 48 hours, Saturday, Sunday, it feels like it was 2 days that we were had the information that he was now paralyzed and completely inconsolable. And so the second day that we woke up because I did not sleep much at all that weekend, and just kind of in shock, waiting the next day after that report from that veterinarian to hear again, because the deal was that they would call once a day to give us an update. And so we got a call again from a different veterinarian, and she was basically saying kind of the same thing. except for she wasn't giving us the same stats that the previous veterinarian was giving us. So she didn't tell us whether or not he had eaten. And so at that point, after the first update phone call from the previous day, I wasn't equipped to handle the conversation anymore. So Marian, my fiance, he made the calls or took the calls. So, obviously we're sitting by the phone all day trying to distract ourselves, just sick on our stomachs, crying all day, just the worst. And it's really painful to watch him go through this too. Because Mr. is absolutely our everything. We consider him our family, and we do everything for him. We take him everywhere we can. He gets anything he needs, anything he wants. So yeah, the waiting was really, really, really difficult. We finally got that second call. Like I was saying, this other veterinarian, we don't know who they were. It was 3 different veterinarians at this point. Was saying, he's not doing any better. He's still the same. He will never recover. We don't know. We can't operate on him because it's in his spine. And she was saying that she's spoken to the neurologist and that they don't know what the prognosis is, but that he's not responding well. Basically saying he's got diarrhea and he's panicking in the cage that they have him in. He's not relaxing. He's not responding the way that other dogs that have lost their mobility would at this point. So, what I was saying before is that they weren't giving us the same statistics or the same specs on Mr. that we had gotten the day before. So Marian asked, did he eat today? And she said, yeah, he ate. And I knew, when I heard that he had eaten, that he was still in there, that he was not giving up on himself, that he wanted to live. So Marian and I made the decision that we would wait the next day until the next time we could go see him, which was that Monday, and we would speak to the quote neurologist. He had the ability to read the MRI scans and images, and we wanted to speak directly with him. After hearing several doctors say that the prognosis was very bleak, we felt a little bit more energized knowing our own dog and knowing him and how he is. So we started talking about it and really trying to go through what the plan was and what we were going to do. And Marian said, of course he's freaking out in there. I'm sure he's completely distraught without you, meaning me. And we were joking a little about how Mr. kind of panted and cried and just whined for 14 hours straight when we drove we were stuck in traffic driving from France to Germany for about 14 hours in the car. Yeah, we took breaks, but no matter how many breaks we took, every time he got back in the car, he was just completely inconsolable again. And so we were kind of laughing about how he is not a chill dog when it comes to stress situations. We started preparing for the ideal of bringing him home. So we started looking up different places, a specialist and physical therapy and all different things. And Marian's mom had driven 4 hours to be with us, to support us. And so she was really,
kind of taken charge and taken the reins with helping get things organized and finding different resources. But, I kept thinking in the back of my mind, like, I don't want to get too excited or like too hopeful, because it could be that we have to make a really hard decision. Because, the way that they were talking about him, we didn't know what we were going to see. Because they had also mentioned he had an infection on his bottom. And that's all they kept saying, that he had an infection on his bottom. So we were like, what in the world? How could he have this infection on his bottom? He went in there, he was fine, which we found out later what happened. But I was talking to my parents, and, obviously they were really supportive and hopeful too, and very invested in the outcome, but also sensible in that, like, you don't want to go there to this hospital with the expectation of bringing your dog home and then not. So I was also trying to prepare myself for the very worst possible case scenario, and I can't even talk about it. It's so crazy how emotional I am how many months later. I'm kind of a big baby though, so I guess it's not really that big of a surprise. Let me try to get it together. Okay. So, that Monday, they told us when we could come. We get to the hospital, which we had, like, visited friends over the weekend that lived nearby us, Louisa and Christopher, who were very supportive and loving and were really there for us when we were, like, completely shattered. But when talking to them, they said that it was the best animal hospital in the area that they had heard. So we were, grateful that we had made a good decision of where to take him, and really glad to hear that from them. So we went there on Monday. We were sitting outside waiting, and, obviously the anxiety is building, and the neurologist, or the veterinarian with the specialization in neurology, came outside, and he again explained what his diagnosis of the situation was. So basically, Mr. had an MRI, and on the MRI they could see that there was bleeding in the spinal cord, and he did mention lesions, and then he mentioned an infection could have caused it. He said that it was something that was, like, latent almost. The word that he used was that it was a chronic problem. Basically, it was a chronic problem that, when it was triggered or when it decided to react or happen, it just attacked the spine, and then went through the paralysis, and that's all they know, because the MRI that they have, it doesn't show live pictures. I guess that's probably a very expensive machine. And so the picture that they saw, they would have to do another MRI to see if the bleeding had stopped, if there was healing. But what they could see was that there was bleeding, and that it was some kind of chronic issue that had an acute reaction to the infection or whatever was causing it. So he kind of threw out a couple of different things that it might have been, but basically he didn't know. And I was listening, I kind of went in with this very, very defensive mindset, but I was a bit talked out of being too aggressive, because, my personality is pretty feisty when it comes to my dog and my family. So I was trying really hard to be patient and to listen and to not jump down his throat, and so that I could make the best decision for Mr. And what he was describing to me was that Mr. wasn't able to walk anymore because his back two legs were paralyzed, and that he was now incontinent, and he had a butt infection, which was caused by him sitting in his own filth in a cage at the hospital. So obviously that really didn't factor into my decision, but when they were talking to me and Marian over the phone, they made it seem like that was part of this bigger issue, when really that was just a result of, I'm not going to say it was, I'll let you decide, but he was sitting in diarrhea in the cage for too long and developed severe rash on his behind, which caused open sores and ultimately an infection. It was bright red, was really, really awful. Luckily, he couldn't feel it, but that clearly wasn't part of what was happening with Mr.'s spine. So, but the doctor kind of lumped it in with another thing to deal with. And he also was having diarrhea, which was obviously caused by the amount of medications that he was on. So obviously that was wreaking havoc on his digestive system. So he had, no longer using the ability to use his legs. He was panicked, having a complete mental and emotional breakdown. According to them, not stopped crying. And he had diarrhea and then the infection on his behind. And so the doctor was saying, he knows how hard of a decision it is, and that he treats his animals are just like family to him, but that his recommendation was to, I'm not even sure how to say it, but to put Mr. to sleep. Okay. I'm going to try not to cry again. And so he, was saying, then he kind of detailed more about why he had this opinion, and that, he can't use the bathroom anymore, and that a nurse had to keep expressing him, and, he was having diarrhea, and that he just wasn't adapting to the paralysis like other dogs that he had seen in his experience, and that his quality of life would be so poor that it would be cruel to make him live like that, because he wasn't adjusting. And so I heard that, I heard it, and I said to him that, Mr.'s happiness and his health and life is my main priority. And that I would never make any decisions selfishly just for my own purpose, and to keep him on this earth just to fulfill something in myself, and at the same time hurt him would be outside of who I am as a person, and that I couldn't do that to him. And I said, at the same time, I know my dog, and I know that he is probably so distraught because of the combination of things that I had described before, and that he couldn't adjust to it, any of that, without me. And I said, I want to try. I want to take him home. I said, I think the very first thing I said to him was, can someone teach me how to express his bladder? Because I want to try. And I said that I would take him home and do everything I could to help him and to make his life at the same happiness level as it was before, and to get him all of the equipment and things that he needs to be a full functioning doggy. And that if it was impossible for me to make that happen, that I would make a hard choice and bring him back to the doctor, to make that decision, because I wouldn't just keep him around for my own purpose. But so long as he's not in physical pain, and the doctor said, well, no, he's not in physical pain. He doesn't have any feeling in his legs anymore, and it's not the acute phase of the paralysis is over. He doesn't have any pain. The only thing that is wrong right now that's needing treated is the infection and the diarrhea. And I said, okay, well, how can I do that? And so if he's not in pain, I just need you to teach me how to express his bladder, administer medication, and what I can do to improve the infection and the diarrhea as swiftly as possible. And anything I need to look out for, you know, and all of the other things that come with that, and discharging an animal. And I said, you know, I really need to see him. I mean, this is my decision as of speaking to you, you know, this is what I'm saying to him, but I need to see my dog. And at that point, you know, I'll know for sure, but right now I want to take him home and do everything I can to bring him back to health, to make his life as wonderful as it was before. And he's like, okay, you know, I would probably want to do the same thing if I were you in your situation, because of how I love my dog too. And he understands why I would want to at least try. And so after assuring each other kind of that, like, well, I want to do the best for my dog, and, you know, my mother-in-law and my fiance are both saying, like, yeah, we're taking him home. Like, without a doubt, he's coming home. And I'm like, if we have to make a hard decision, we'll delay it until I see with my own eyes, because I know my dog. So, with that said, don't want to repeat that too many times. We were told to go to the back of the hospital, so we drove around, and we waited there for like 2 or 3 minutes. Of course, it felt like eternity. And then they brought him out. They were holding him, and it was the weirdest thing because he just didn't look like himself. He just looked like he'd been through hell and back. But I grabbed him, you know, and his backside was just really gooey and had all this medication. It was bright red, so I was afraid to touch it. But I held him, and I sat down on the ground with him in my lap, and he just kind of relaxed right into my lap. And there was another dog, I guess, that had just gotten a surgery for the IVDD, which is the degenerative disc disease. I think that's exactly what it's called, but basically it can be fixed with surgery. Had just gotten it, and they were kind of walking him around the like grass area with a harness for his back legs. And he was, the veterinarian was like, this is how a dog is normally responding, you know, to the paralysis. They want to move, and they want to get up. I think he was kind of saying that to like to bolster his position, but I stood up, and I wasn't, it might not have been at that moment, because I think at that moment the nurse came to show me how to express his bladder. And so she was telling me in German and was trying to get it translated, which I've obviously, like, Marian was standing there and he could understand. And there's a lot of information on the internet too, if you're interested in learning. But he had just gone to the bathroom, so it was kind of a fruitless effort, but I got the idea. And so I was on the ground with him after, you know, they had shown me, and they kind of went back inside. And at this point, you know, I was in kind of like full mom mode. I wasn't crying. I was just, what do I need to do? Where's everything that I need to take with me? What do I need to get? What's the name of the supplement? What's this? You know, all the things that I needed were really my main focus, aside from Mr. actually holding him and touching him and seeing how he was doing, because he was fine as soon as he got to me. As soon as he saw me, when he was brought out the door, he was like a little whimper and was kind of moving to get to me. So that was point number 1 for I know my dog. And then point number 2 would be that he was laying in my lap and relaxed completely. And after we had tried to express his bladder, Marian and the veterinarian were kind of standing talking, and I propped Mr. up on his 2 front legs and held up his back legs, and he started running. So I'm hunched over, like hunched like this with him. You know what I mean? Like holding up his back legs, almost like a wheelbarrow, but at the same level as his legs would be if they were standing. And I'm chasing him around. He's running as fast as he can. And I think it was at that point that the veterinarian was like, well, maybe you guys will come back in 6 months. And he did this kind of this thing and was like, and you'll do this to me, and you'll say, we told you so. I think when he saw Mr. how he reacted to me, I think in the way that he responded was a little bit like pulling himself back a little bit, like, okay, I see what they're saying, you know, that makes more sense why they would want to try. So then we took him home, and I stayed with him. Ryan and his mother went to the pet shop, to the supplier, to buy all the different things that we needed that night. And then, you know, maybe I can make another video to talk about what's been going on since. But it's been about, 2.5 months that we've had Mr. back home with us. I would show him to you right now, but I had to take him back inside because I thought it was getting a little too hot. So for all the crying and all of the tears that you just got to see, he's back home. And I think I made sense in the video what I was saying in the story, but for clarity, you know, he is paralyzed and incontinent still. We have been doing physical therapy with him every day. He takes vitamin B and a few other homeopathic things that we were recommended. We brought him here to Spain because Marian's house here has a really nice pool, as you can see. So we've been doing water therapy with him every day for 2 weeks. So we've been trying everything, the daily massages, stimulation, squeezing his toes, and we've seen, I will be conservative in what I say because, you know, I don't want to, you know, overestimate what's possible, but we have seen improvement in the sensation that he has, even changes in the last couple of weeks with how he responds to massage and touch. He has been reacting much differently, and maybe I can do another video because this one's getting a little bit too long. But we are still very hopeful. We have a wheelchair for him, as I'm sure you'll see in the videos, the little clips that I can insert. He has several slings that we use, and but a stroller and a wagon, which creates quite a spectacle. But that's another story for another video. But yeah, he's doing amazing. He is loving every minute of his life still. He's the same dog as he was before. The only difference is that he can't walk. And he drags his little bottom around where we let him. You know, obviously he doesn't drag it across the pavement or anything like he could get injured, but he's totally adjusted. He's not depressed. He's not self-harming. He's not, which is an actual thing for dogs that go through something like this. He's chews bones, plays with toys, he digs, you know, in blankets and rolls around in the sun and in the grass. He still plays with other dogs. He runs to me and to Marian when he's in his wheelchair. And, you know, I know we made the absolutely correct decision, because he shows it to us every single day that he is totally down to be the two-legged wonder that he is. I mean, he makes the very best of it and inspires us every day to to make the best of anything that we have thrown at us, and also to just be grateful, because, you know, things can change in an instant. You know, I've seen that several times in the past couple of years with some huge losses in my family. So I think constantly being checked, you know, that life is not a guarantee, and that what you have today you may not have tomorrow. Obviously, these are a lot of cliches, but when something like this happens to you, it brings those all to the forefront and makes them very, very real. I hope I explained everything well, and that it was linear enough to follow. I drone on, ramble on, and get off topic. This is really, really hard for me to talk about. This is the third time trying to record this video. I wanted to make sure that people knew what was going on before I just kind of went about my business and kept posting singing videos, or even posting on Instagram or anywhere else like I haven't been, because it just hasn't felt. It's been a rough couple of months adjusting. And, you know, I think it's the best thing that anyone has told me so far is that they are impacted by our emotions and our happiness. If we're happy, they can be happy, because they can sense if we're not okay. And so it's my job to just be like, yeah, man, this is totally cool. You can totally do this, mister. And not let him see or feel my grief, because it is a loss. It is a lot of work. It's not something I really have touched on too much. You see those inspirational videos of dogs in wheelchairs or in, you know, overcoming something, but the amount of work that goes into that every single day, and the sacrifices and the emotions, it's tremendous, and it's burdensome, but it's worth it. And I would not ever, ever, ever trade any of that away, because he is my soulmate. I mean, besides Marian, he really is. He's our soulmate. He's our child. He's our everything. And so every single second that we are dedicating to him is totally and completely worth it. And we're convinced that we're doing the best thing for him, and that he's totally happy. And you can be the judge of that for yourself in the videos that I post in, or that I insert here, if you want to be the judge. I don't know what you want to do. But I really, I thank everybody that's been so helpful and supportive. My parents, obviously, and our friends giving us support. Marian's mom, the same with Louisa and Christopher. Marian's work, his employer has been just so incredibly understanding. They all were just so supportive and sent so many emails and phone calls, and just a lot of love from everyone. So thank you all for that. And Mr. thanks you too. Okay, I'm going to stop crying, and I'm going to leave you guys with that long video. I love you guys, and I'm going to post more singing content soon, and update videos about Mr. Thanks for watching. I love you guys. Bye.